usual. Right, let's kick off. Tonight we're joined by MartinB from the forum, who many of you will already know. Martin was going to be giving this talk in Luxor had the Star Party gone ahead this year, but obviously, unfortunately, that was didn't manage that this year. Hopefully, next year we'll be back in some form at some Star Party somewhere in some sort of bubble, I'm sure. So this talk is going to be on nighttime landscape photography, which is something Martin's been into for quite a few years now, and has been producing some absolutely fantastic images, which I'm sure you may have seen posted on the forum. He also posts them on his Astral Peaks Facebook page, so it's worth having a follow there. Martin's been into deep sky imaging for as long as I can remember on the forum, Martin. You've been doing deep sky for a long time, but it's only been the last few years that you've really got into the landscape stuff, isn't it? So Martin's going to talk through tonight the techniques and workflows of some of the nighttime astrophotography, and give us a quick process in Lightroom as well, hopefully. If anyone's got any questions along the way, if you can pop them in chat, and if I can, I'll squeeze them in as we go. If not, we can save them to the end. But sometimes if people are doing a demo, it's easier to ask the question when you're actually in the software at that point. So if there's anything like that, just whack it up in chat, and I'll try and politely butt in. But otherwise, over to you, Martin. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much, Grant. I'll just share my screen. Hope this works all right.
It does. Perfect.
Right. Okay, so this is me finally deciding that the weather's not doing me any favours and thinking it's time to call it a night on Baslow Edge. So you can see, even with the murkiest conditions, you can still get a picture at night. So yes, a little bit about me then, and this talk. First of all, I feel a bit like an imposter. I'm not a nighttime photographic guru. I'm just an enthusiast. And this talk really is aimed at people who perhaps haven't considered just trailing out at night into the countryside to take pictures, or people who maybe have just started out. If you're an expert, and I know we've got professional photographers on the forum, and if you're at that sort of level, if I say things which are plainly wrong or misleading, please feel free to put me straight, because I'm always ready and eager to learn. I'm still climbing that steep slope. This Astral Peaks photography Facebook page is my wife Jackie said to me, as I showed her my images, bored her to death with them, deep sky images and landscape. She said, you ought to make some greetings cards, because it's really hard to get nice greetings cards from men. Somehow Astro seems to attract men. And so I thought, well, that's a challenge. So I decided to start see if I could make greetings cards, and not the sort of photo box type greetings cards, but ones you could actually take to a retailer and that they could put on their shelves and sell. So my challenge was to see if I could actually make cards to sell. And it was quite an interesting experience, the complexity of making greetings cards. But I had taken them down to a couple of shops in Chesterfield, and they do sell. And some do, some don't. And it's quite interesting to know which ones people like and which ones they don't. I found that very interesting and good feedback. So that's what Astral Peaks photography was set up for. Now, I've been doing Grant said, deep sky imaging for 14 or 15 years now. And I love it. I'm passionate about it. But, oh my goodness, it is high pressure and intense, isn't it? I mean, first of all, the whole getting images can be a bit of a nightmare. And then we worry about our ideal sampling rate and the shapes of stars in the corners, and whether you can just pull out that tiny little bit of nebulosity that someone else managed to get. And oh gosh, don't you sometimes just need an antidote from all that? Well, this is the antidote. Now, if you've dabbled with deep sky and finding all a bit heavy going, then get out sometimes and try this sort of landscape photography. Another word about this is I am the world's worst daytime photographer. I go out and I faff around with my exposures and depth of field and so on, and Jackie will get her iPhone out and she'll take a picture just like that. Hers is magazine quality. and mine would struggle to get in the Beano really. So, but nighttime is different. It slows down, it's all manual, you can take your time, there's no rush. And so that's a different ball game for me. So what I'm going to do tonight is just what I think it is really, what makes it a nice landscape nighttime image, planning, and that's poor planning, poor performance, and that's very much the case here. We all like to talk about kit, so we'll have a little chat about that. A bit about getting the shot, composition, and just the imaging routines. Some specials like star trails, a bit about stacking. Astro events, so I don't know how people are fixed for the Geminids tonight, but it's not looking good here. Think of it as lots of showers and the odd clear interval. And then if I have time, I'll do a quick Lightroom process on the Milky Way. Some of you will be very familiar with Lightroom, and others won't have seen it at all. It'll just to show what it can do. And there's plenty of other similar software to Lightroom around, but Lightroom's the one that comes with the Adobe Photoshop suite. So what is it? Nighttime landscape photography. This next shot, I don't want you to just walk away from your screens in horror. Okay. In fairness, this is me testing out a £20 eBay lens. Actually quite a good lens. But quite often, people take photographs of things like conjunctions and interesting events, which are very nice to see, but they tend to just go out into the back garden and take pictures like this. And what you see with this picture is you have the most impressive constellation, I think, in our night sky. And what do you look at? What do you see on this image? You see our house at a time when it needed painting. You see an aerial, you see a chimney, a few scruffy trees, and oh yeah, there's a few stars around. So this is absolutely what you don't want to do if you're trying to take a nice image of the Earth and the sky juxtaposed. Most of us are in a position where we do have to travel a little bit and hunt around. Now, this picture is not mine, very sadly. This is the best picture you will see this evening, I think. Although, apologies to James Mackay, because it is heavily compressed. It was a picture I just downloaded off the forum. So James, as many of you know, is an admin on the forum, and he's a very modest guy. This picture, when we were having this, the SGL challenges, the image challenges, this was the people's champion for the year. This was the people voted as the best picture. And James just says, oh, I just happened to be there. I just got lucky. So he just happened to be in Las Palmas. He just happened to be at the top of a mountain. He just happened to know about cloud inversion, where the Milky Way would be. And when it appeared like that, and he's probably been there a few times when it hadn't quite turned out as nice as this, but when it did, he was there and he knew exactly what to do. But he'd planned it. It was there in his mind what he wanted to do, and that was the foundation of this fantastic image. A bit on planning. I go out in the Peak District a lot cycling, but I just stay on the roads. I'm very much a tarmac guy. My wife, Jackie does a lot of walking. So I said, look, can you have a look around on your walks, somewhere that probably ideally within 2 miles of a car, but somewhere I can park the car, something that's pretty scenic, but something that sticks up above the horizon's really good. So she told me about this little fabric rock, it's called, near Ashover. And so I wandered out and had a look. And I just wander around, look at the different angles, and you see that it's quite frustrating, fabric rock, because most of them aren't, it doesn't project high, it's not a good silhouettes, but it's workable. And so this is the sort of thing I like to do, is just to get out and have a nice walk and just have a look around first and see, because what you think might work well often doesn't, and sometimes it's the other way around. In this case, I went out again when there was a full moon coming up, because I had hoped that I could get the moon with a long lens, just popping over the top of this rock down at the bottom. Didn't quite work, the angles weren't quite right, and if I had gone and got it in the right position, I'd have fallen off a cliff edge. So I decided not to do that. But I will go back again sometime, because we've got the village of Ash over there, and it's throwing up a bit of light pollution, which is a good thing if there's a bit of cloud around, which is one of the nice things about imaging. If you've got clear spells and quite a bit of cloud, and it's going to be useless for deep sky imaging, just get out into the countryside, and the light pollution in conjunction with the clouds can help give you an extra dimension to an image that wouldn't be there if the sky was completely clear sometimes. So I might go back to fabric rock on a clear night. I've got some idea of the best angles now. We had talking about this Stargazers Lounge challenges, we had one which was on constellations. And I had a look. Riga was very, very nicely placed in the sky at the time. And I had been planning to go out to this place in Derbyshire in the Peak District near Winster called the Nine Ladies Stone Circle. There's only 5 ladies left now, sometimes called the Grey Ladies, but they're 2 meters high, these stones. And I thought, well, that might work quite well in conjunction with the Auriga, which is the charioteer. So it's a Bronze Age weapon of war. And we've got a Bronze Age stone circle. So that's quite a nice juxtaposition. So I went out and did a recce. It didn't work out, the angles didn't work out ideal. The best place was actually to have stood behind this wall, which would have then got the wall in the picture and wouldn't have worked as well. So I couldn't access the best angle, but never mind. This was on the evening. I went before it got dark, and so you can just have a little photo session, and found this rock, little moon, and I thought that'll actually work quite well for star spikes, star trails on a future night, I think. And this was a picture I took, and I think that this was at midnight, so this orange glow is not sunset. This is light pollution. Everywhere in the Peak District is reasonably light polluted, and the clouds really are your friends sometimes. They given the picture this nice glow, and without it, I think if it had been a crystal clear night, I think it would have probably been a duller image because of it. This was a night I went up onto Baslow Edge wanting to get some star trails. This is a rock called the Eagle Stone. And I was very miffed because it was a useless night for taking star trails. So I'll pack up and go home. I decided to take a picture of the rock, and I thought, oh, actually quite atmospheric. It's again clouds adding an extra dimension. And from another angle, and a little bit of water can look out for little puddles and little lakes and little ponds and so on, because they can work really well at night. There's a photographer on Stargazers Lounge, Dave W, and he just takes some of the most amazing nighttime pictures where there's still water, and it's got one of beautiful winter's Orion, which is reflected off the water, and it's just a stunning image. I've never managed anything of that quality. So this picture, anyone who's familiar with the Peak District will know this spot. This is Burbage Edge, and it's a lovely spot. I mean, it's you've got heather-clad moorland, and you've got there's over here there's remains of an old Iron Age fort, Carl Walk, Higgator up here. So it's a lovely place to go for a walk. And I just thought I'll go and see what I can get picture-wise. And it's rubbish, actually. There's nothing there at night time that really stands out. The problem is at night, especially if you've no moon, it's all this is just black. So you don't see any of it. So what you get is this flat horizon here, and which makes it useless. I mean, you can illuminate these stones, but it doesn't, because they don't stand out, it doesn't create a great image. So a bit later on, when it got dark, I took this picture, and it's just, this picture is really annoying for me, because I love these clouds, and I love this with a bit of sky glow coming up. And but wouldn't it be nice if there was over here, there was on the right, there was some dramatic structure that could juxtapose against the sky properly. So it's a sort of frustrating picture. And it just goes to show that what works well as a landscape photograph at night won't necessarily necessarily be a good landscape during the day. It won't be a good landscape necessarily at night. The requirements are different. However, if it wasn't for this horrible bright white thing here, otherwise known as the moon, this shot would have been impossible, really. So the moon can be a great friend for capturing landscapes which otherwise would just be pitch black. So this is Lady Bower, and it goes over to the dam wall here, and the glow comes from the village of Bamford. And again, it picks up these stars, and then you've got Aquarius in the background. So I think without the moon, it would have just been pretty hopeless. This is Little Longstone Chapel, and it's a couple of our friends got married there. So I thought, well, I'll take a nighttime picture, star trails, and we got it framed and gave it to them as a little wedding present. And if it hadn't been for a bright moon, this I couldn't have taken this image. You can do some light painting with a pen torch, but it wouldn't. That chapel's a little bit further away than it looks, and it wouldn't have worked terribly well. The gravestones would have been bright, the lighting on the chapel would have been faint and patchy. So this nice, soft, natural light comes from the moon, directly behind. So the moon, yeah, it can work, and you can still take star trails as well. I think the star trails were a little bit short. I didn't leave it very long, because just down the road is the best pub in the world, the Packhorse Inn at Little Longstone, and there were other attractions that night. So talk about water again. It's a little lane here, and I go cycling along here sometimes. And this is Heathcote Mere, so it's a tiny little pond, really. But it transforms. I think it transforms the image, because if you look at the horizon, there's nothing very dramatic. Got these few little trees, but it's made by this still water and the reflections reflecting in the water. And again, you've got the clouds, which I like. And that's just a portrait shot. So this is how I got interested, really. It was star parties. Star parties for me have traditionally been a head down, peer at your computer screen, and 4 hours will have passed you by, and you still hadn't managed to get your telescope to connect properly to the mount and so on. But this was a night when everything worked well, and I had the imaging kit running, and you just plonk your camera down and you can just have some fun, and you're not looking for any great artistic creation. You're just looking for something to capture the atmosphere of the star party. And that's, and then you could set up star trails, and you go and have a few whiskies here, there and everywhere, and just enjoy yourself. And I think this captures the spirit of this is a Stargazers Lounge star party at Luxor, so I'm sure a number of you are familiar with the place. And here's another star party one. This was a couple of years ago. This is the legendary Stargazers Lounge quiz team, Team Scumbag, and this was the weather was terrible. It wasn't rainy, but it was cloudy all weekend. And Team Scumbag, we were chewing the cud with a few glasses, and I looked up, and that's a clear sky. So tripod out, camera on, click, and then back to having a few drinks. And it was I think it was the only shot from the whole of that star party which contained any stars. So I was quite pleased with that. And it does just capture the essence of, I think, of the star party. And then you can wander around. People recognize this is the River Wye at Luxor, and this is Panorama. The panoramic shots are quite interesting, giving you those wide field views. And you just kind of let the creative juices flow. What I really like about this picture is the daffodils. I think I love these old rickety trees. And here's the good old moon and daffodils. So I quite like that. This is from Luxor again, just on the banks of the Wye. And here's the Orion going down. And this is actually an old, this fading sunset. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about composition. I'm afraid as I said, I'm a useless daytime photographer, and I try my best to think about composition for nighttime pictures. And to some extent, the rules that you use during the daytime, I guess, still apply. You know, the rules of thirds, to have a horizon, don't have it cutting straight across the middle. Like quite often with nighttime, I think you need to take it lower down than a third of the way up, really, if you've got a really nice skyscape. As I said earlier, avoid flat horizons unless the foreground has a lot of interest, like a water scene or something. And structures with vertical height work really well. And they don't even have to be particularly pretty structures, really. Just old industrial chimneys or whatever. Something that gives a bit of drama. We're just aiming to get a nice juxtaposition between what's familiar to us, the Earth, you know, the Earth and our surroundings, which we know, juxtaposed with the infinite sky. I think that's what works so well, these types of photographs. The great thing is clouds, light pollution, moonlight. You can all use them all to your advantage. You don't need I would love to have a really, you know, a Bortle one sky and pitch black and 300 clear nights a year. I mean, don't get me wrong, but we have to work with what we've got, and this is what we've got. Light painting, taking a decent torch can really help show objects which would otherwise be hidden, and we can add a certain amount of drama as well. So that can work well. And then just be creative. You can make your own. You can take a picture and run around if you want and create trails from your head torch, or cars sometimes make interesting trails. Urban views, the classics, big moons coming up over some church tower or something, quite hard to get. I've been trying for ages with the Crooked Spire in Chesterfield and still haven't succeeded in finding an ideal spot, but I'm getting there. So this is an example of this light painting. It's the Eagle Stone again. Yeah, I think it does add a bit of drama to the picture. It's a bit of trial and error. I've got to take several photos and it can look very blotchy, or it doesn't look bright enough, or it's like too bright, but you play around and get something you like. This shows this feeble Milky Way. Really just shows the situation we have with light pollution in a rural location in the Peak District. But so this is a Magpie Mine. It's quite a photogenic spot at night. And I stuck a little torch inside the building to help pick out the inside. And here is just an example, just a tree. It's a spindly little tree. This looks like a great metropolis. This is a very small village of Great Longston. But I quite like the orange lights and the tree and a few stars and Orion tucked away up here. So we like to talk about kit, don't we? We love kit. And actually, all you need is a camera and a tripod. You don't need a fancy camera, really. You don't need a fancy tripod. So if you've got, if you've got a camera that can take a 30-second exposure, then that's fine. That's it. And so if people have got a halfway functional camera that will give them long exposures, then I would recommend that people who haven't started on this type of photography, that they use what they've got and just get used to their kits. Because I think the most important thing about your camera is that you get familiar with it. So just have a talk a little bit more about kit. Tripods. I have 2 tripods, and as I say, I sometimes have to walk a fair way to get to where I need to be. So a light tripod is a boon, and one that packs away quite small. So I've got a little travel tripod. It's a 4-section tripod. It's very small. It's very light. Just stick it in a rucksack, and that's great. And I've got a sort of medium duty Manfrotto tripod, but particularly for, well, sometimes I take 2 tripods if I'm doing star trails and have another one handy for other stuff. And also a heavier duty tripod's more useful if it's a bit windy. You want to hang something off the tripod to stabilize it. Cameras, I suppose we could talk all night about cameras, couldn't we? But I don't want to. Most cameras aren't designed for nighttime photography. They don't take into account nighttime photography. They want fancy metering, all this stuff that's in an expensive camera, top-end Nikon or Canon. 80% of that is redundant, really, for you. So you don't need to get a high-end camera. And megapixels, right? How big do you want to make your posters? If you want a billboard size, then yeah, you're wanting 20 plus megapixels. But if you're not wanting to do that, then 10 megapixels is actually quite a lot of pixels, but you can make a reasonable poster size image with that. So then there's these DSLRs, mirrorless, and they're all very good. The mirrorless, they have some fantastic chips, I think, in the Sony and the Fuji, and they're a bit heavy on battery power, I guess. I've heard, but I've never used one. I have a Canon 6B and a Canon 80D. So this 80D is APS. Because it's a smaller chip, obviously, to get the same field of view, you obviously need a shorter focal lens, which I use a Tokina 10-16 zoom. But on my 6D lenses, yeah, Samyang are the recommendation, aren't they? I've got 1 or 2 Samyang lenses, and if any of you aren't familiar with them, Samyang are just complete manual lenses. All the money goes into the optics, and they are very decent lenses, and they're relatively cheap. So I can thoroughly recommend Samyang lenses. The faster the better, obviously, but yeah, I mean, I've got a Samyang 24mm, which is f1.4, so that's plenty fast enough. So I can't recommend them highly enough. I've had 2 Samyangs with off-center optics. So if you are buying a new lens, Samyang, take a few starfield photographs and check your optics. You'll get distortions in the corners, obviously, wide open, but check that there's distortions at the same level all around. I've just had 2 lenses which weren't as they should be. Whenever I go out to take a torch, not just to avoid tripping over boulders, but as I say, for the light painting. Camera bag, obviously, I like the rucksack type bag. It's much easier if you're going to be doing a fair bit of walking, carrying heavy duty kit. An intervalometer so you can run an automated sequence. You can get all sorts of trackers now, can't you? You get, I had an old Astra Track, which is fabulous. Star Adventurer, the EQ type trackers. But my favourite bit of kit is as a clockwork tracker made by Iomegan. And it literally, you wind it up and you can hear it clicking, tick, 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 tick. And it has a little spring feature to balance it with your camera. And it's great, it works really well. As long as you don't put too long a lens on it, up to 100mm, you can happily get nice tight stars over 2 minutes. So that's if you want to do some stacking, just like with deep sky. If you are doing star trails or you are tracking and taking a series of shots, then particularly with wide angle lenses, you need to watch out for dew. Obviously, narrow, wide field lenses have quite a bit of glass at the front, and they can't have too much of a lens hood, otherwise it'll come into the field of view. So something to think about. So I have a little lithium-ion battery and a little small dew controller. For some reason, I do lots of groveling. So ground sheet's handy. But this is one of the great things about being out somewhere at night with your camera. With deep sky, I feel I've now got a disconnect from the night sky. I often go out to the observatory. Everything sort of is automated to get going. And then I come into the house once everything's running, and I connect up VNC viewer and connect the laptop in the house to what's going on in the observatory. And that's it. And I don't actually look at the clear sky at all, other than the little bit that I'm going to image. So when you go out, and you're out in the Peak District or anywhere, I take a star chart and sometimes take a pair of binoculars, and it's marvellous. It's just a real joy just to be back in touch with the sky again. That's a big plus for me. Oh, sorry, this is a really busy slide, but this is also, I should say that if you haven't seen it, on the link that Grant's posted to tonight's talk, there's a little some notes to go with the talk that you can download, which has all this on it. So you don't need to take notes for anything. But before I go out, because I'm hopelessly disorganized, really, I'm terrible. I'm the sort of guy who forgot to take my camera to a star party once and that sort of thing. So I do try and write down a little crib sheet. So before you go out, set the camera and lens to manual, turn off any image stabilization, because that's not going to help you at all. Unless I'm doing star trails or tracking and taking longer exposures, I'll fully open the aperture. You need as much light getting in as you can. I experimented with ISO. On the Canon 6D, I found that 1600 is a nice compromise to give me some headroom for processing. If I go lower, if I go to 400, there's this issue with camera chips around ISO, something called, I don't know, you're familiar with it, ISO invariance. So some cameras, and Nikon's are quite good for this, and the Fuji and the Sony. If you image at 400 and you then, in software, basically bump it up 2 stops to the equivalent of ISO 1600, it's exactly the same image. You know, we know that ISO is just an amplification. So if you go from 400 to 1600 in processing, it should give you exactly the same image. But it won't do in a lot of cameras. So it certainly won't in a Canon 6B. And I guess it's down to issues like read noise. You can get some quite unpleasant noise on the 6B if the dark shadows, if you really try to pump them up from 400 ISO, whereas 1600 works better. But the best thing to do is to experiment with your camera to see what ISO works best. You really don't need to be going. I don't think you ever really need to be going up to those really high ISOs that cameras can achieve now. Not quite sure why. Some people may be able to put me right on this, but I don't see why you'd ever want to go so fast, really, if you've got a decent fast lens. So 1600 with the 6D, but if I had some of the Nikons, I'd probably image at ISO 400 to give me more room for processing. But obviously when I'm framing, you need the 1600 so you can actually see something on your screen. I set a 2-second delay unless I'm using an intervalometer. And focus, focus is critical, obviously, but it's very easy to look at your camera screen and see what you see is a good image, but actually if you zoom fully in, you see a very out of focus star. So do that, zoom right in to just confirm that your focus is okay. And use live view if you've got it for focusing. I use a distant light, if possible, or some distant street light. They're normally not hard to find. The moon is okay, and a planet. If you're using a star, it does need to be a fairly bright star. I have, on occasion, walked about 300 or 400 meters, plonked my head torch down, and gone back and focused on my head torch because there was no available suitable light source to find. So it can be a bit tricky, but take your time on that.
Martin, sorry, can I just, Mark's asking, you do RAW or JPEG?
RAW, yes, always image in RAW. The problem with the 6D producer is a 12-bit chip, and that gives you 4,000 or 4,600 different brightness levels it can contend with, and it just allows you to stretch and manipulate things much more than a JPEG, which is 8-bit. So you've only got 256 light levels there. So yes, really, if you can, then use RAW. So just coming back to focus. Yeah, something else to think about is the target, the light you're going to focus on is where you're going to put it on your chip for focusing, because we know that the focal plane is not flat, so it will be different. That's the difference in the corners to what it is in the focal point. We're different in the corners to what it is at the center. So just move it out a bit, a third of the way from the edge of the chip. It's quite a good position. But just you don't have to put it right in the center. It's probably best not to when you're focusing. I just can't get over how stupid I am at times, because I take pictures and I get home and the horizon's tilted, and it's really a stupid thing to do. I mean, on my ball head, it tells me when things are level. My Canon 80D tells me, it also has a little level indicator. So there's no excuse. And the problem with it, if you have a tilted horizon, is you've got to rotate it, which means you then have to crop. But also that rotation means pixels are software is interpolating them, so you're losing resolution. So just a bit of time and a bit of patience, which I'm not very good with, will just improve the final image that you get. The classic exposure time, so how long do you expose for? Generally, you want to expose for as long as you can without getting star trails. And the old rule of thumb is that is 500 divided by the focal length of your lens. And with the newer chips, they're having ever smaller and smaller pixels. So what you do see now, if you zoom right in, is you will see star trailing using that formula. But when you stand back from an image, when in reality, in the real world, those star trails at that length are not really noticeable unless you are into pixel peeping. But it is a maximum. I wouldn't recommend going beyond that 500 divided by focal length. And if you've got a bright moonlit night when the light levels are better, it might be better. You could perhaps just be a bit more conservative with that. The other thing is intervalometers. When you're a bit cold and fuzzy-headed, you can easily mess up the settings on that. So just before you start, double check your intervalometer settings, that they are it's going to do what you want it to go and do. So something on tracking and imaging. So we know that from deep sky, or the deep sky imagers among you know that if you take an image and then you take another image and another image and you combine them, you get a better signal to noise ratio, you get a more depth to your image. So there's two ways you can go about that. And this does work to some extent, particularly Milky Way shots. It's not necessary for all images, but for Milky Way shots, it can be helpful. You can get a little tracker, and that will keep the camera pointed exactly at your stars, and they won't trail. And you can take 2-minute pictures using a tracker, and you can take lots of them, and then you can stack them in software afterwards. Or you can let the stars flow by, and you're limited to if you've got a 14mm lens, you're more or less limited to about 30 seconds. But you take lots of them, and the sky will roll by, but your foreground will stay static. And that way you can then put them into software and get a deeper, an image you can do more in the processing. If you are tracking, don't forget, as I have done once or twice, to take a still shot of the foreground, because there's no way to recover a 2-minute blur on the foreground if you don't do that. So this is in Norfolk, and this guy was a London lawyer, and he quit the job and he bought this place near Seapawling in Norfolk, and we were staying in his little camping field, and he's also set up an Airbnb, and it's quite a dark sky there. I mean, those who've been to Kelling, people sometimes grumble about it, but it's really not a bad sky. They got security lights on all over the place. So I said, "You've got a really dark sky here. You would like me to do some shots of the Milky Way over your Place Bridge house?" I said, "You could probably use them. You know, it's a selling point. The dark sky." He's really enthusiastic about that. I said, "I can't do anything with those security lights on." He said, "No problem." So he switched all the security lights off, and that was great. So this picture, it's actually got Jupiter. That's Jupiter, Saturn there. This is a single shot, 30-second image at f1.8, 14mm Sigma lens. And then I took this next one is 42-minute exposures, and it's not a great process. The problem here I had was dew was starting to form because I hadn't used a dew strap, stupidly. But if we just go back, oh, it doesn't want to go back. Here we go. So that shows the difference, what a bit of tracking can actually do for you. So it is handy for Milky Way shots, but as I say, for the shots, it's really doesn't necessarily add a great deal. And if you want to go down that stacking route, then this Equator software is really neat. It's a really neat software package for stacking. You could probably even use it for deep sky imaging. It allows you to use darks and flats, and it will. You can tell it, look, the stars are going to be static, but the foreground's going to be moving, or the foreground's going to be static and the stars are going to be moving, and it works it all out. You can do a few clever things with it. So it's a very good, handy package. That's for Windows. The Mac alternative, Starry Sky Stacker, is $40 when I last looked. And so Equator is good for star trails as well. And there's also Star Stacks, which is cross-platform. Panoramas can be fun. I've not done a lot of panoramas, but the problem with panoramas is that it's all right with the mobile phone doing panoramas. You know, I'm sure all of us have taken nice panoramas with our mobile phones because the focal plane is right up next to the chip because a mobile phone's very thin. It's not the same with the DSLR. So the focal plane is somewhere towards the front end of the lens, and the chip's right at the back. So when you turn your camera to do a panorama, you end up with this parallax error, and it can be, you know, just about practically impossible to adequately stitch a panorama together when you're in that situation. So you can get, you need a mount. This is a Nodal Ninja, very nice. You don't need, it's not top of the range, but it's a bit of a price, and it can go more basics and things to do the same job. But yeah, if you want to do panoramas, you think about getting a panoramic head, which allows you to make adjustments to the position of the camera and the way it rotates, so that you eliminate the parallax error. So this is using a Nodal Ninja, and it's just Nodal Ninja, and it's 3 panes. But this is put together in Lightroom, and not very carefully either. I was just messing around really, but you can see these dark lines. That's where I've not adequately corrected for the vignetting. And you can see this horrible looking stars. And this is, it's not because of the lens being awful, it's because of the star trails, but it's not matched up the star trails. So it's giving you a sort of double whammy. And so giving you this very unpleasant looking star because it's not accurately stitching the image together. Whereas in this image, this is using PT-GUI, which is the daddy of panoramic software. It's quite labour intensive, but you can see the stars there are tight, everything's lined up as it should be. So it's a bit of a labour of love, panoramas really, but they can sometimes work okay. So that's all I've got to say so far. I was planning to do a quick process in Lightroom, but I don't know if anyone's got any questions or wants to put me right on anything.
Thanks, Martin. There has been a couple of questions in the chat. Alien 13, I don't know if you want to ask your question. Do you want me to? Or Oh, okay, I'll ask for you. He's just asking regarding tripods. Just wondered what height you normally use. He shoots
Okay.
at a height of 6 to 12 inches.
Pardon?
I think he's saying he shoots a lot at a height of 6 to 12 inches.
Yeah, sometimes that's where the ground sheet comes in. Sometimes I am groveling around on the ground. Yeah, particularly if you've got you want something to stick out up into the sky, and it's something that's not very high. Then the only way to do it is to get down and dirty, really. So the little travel tripod will actually is capable of, you can turn around the whatever you call it, little column thing in the tripod. You can turn that the other way around, so you can actually pretty well have your camera on the ground if you want to. Most of the time I don't need to do that, so most of the time I just want it at a nice comfortable height. My 80D's got a tiltable screen, and that helps, doesn't it? I mean, a tiltable screen if you are getting low down, but normally I have it just so that I can have the camera comfortably at eye level. The other thing is, if you want to, if it's very windy, I prefer to have the camera down low, really. I think it just helps the stability. So the travel tripod's actually really good there, because it's actually got four separate joints, and so it will go down really low. So yeah, does that answer the question?
Thanks, Martin. I think Norman's got a question now. I don't know if you want to ask it, Norman, rather than type it. There we go.
Yeah, Martin. You know, with all good, even good quality lenses, you do get horrendous coma in the corner. And normally, with a good lens, it will stop down by about f4.
Yeah.
But of course, you get the diffraction pattern from the iris or the diaphragm.
Yeah.
So is it best to use a circular stop down ring in front of the lens or at the back of the lens?
I don't know the answer to that. The only thing is, because most of my imaging over the years has been deep sky, and deep sky images agonize over the shapes of stars. And some of the most stunning landscape pictures I've seen on the internet, just world-class images. But when I look at them, they've got horrible coma in the stars in the corners. But they're still just the most amazing images. So, to be honest, my solution to that problem, is not to worry about it. Now, I know this is like the Antichrist talking here. So imaging talks about saying, don't worry about distorted stars; they don't matter. They only matter if you go looking for them. And what do they say about the second sign of madness is hairs on the palm of your hand, and the first sign is looking for them. It's a little bit like I find. So I can't answer the technical query, Norman, because I've never tried to address it. So I'm sorry to let you down on that.
No. I just wondered if you tried it, look for a simple solution.
Yeah. No, but it's interesting. I do sometimes. Having said everything I've said, I do occasionally stop down if I want to get a longer picture for star trails. I'll stop down a little bit. But as you can imagine, if you're doing a star trail shot, then distorted stars aren't going to matter. In fact, it'll probably give you a more impressive star trail, won't it? So, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know quite what you're suggesting, actually. So perhaps for other people who might not be sure, what is it what are the alternatives that you're suggesting?
You have, essentially probably a 3D printed ring or something that equates to, you have your lens wide open, and
yes,
reduce the stop down effect. So yes. The question is that best introduced in front of the lens or at the back? I would at the back, but
Mr. Richards just joined in there. Steve, do you want to unmute if you can, or do you want me to call that out? Not sure. I can't. You're muted, Steve. Shall I read it out? What you said? Oh, there you go. You're there now.
I should be there now. Yeah. Yeah, what I do is I use a stop-down ring at the front of the lens, and I found that that works really well because it means that you can have the lens itself fully open, which means that you're not going to get any effective diffraction spikes from the iris. And you can control the amount of stop down by obviously the size of the ring that you get. It's very easy to do this by simply getting a stop down ring, because they're normally made of metal. They have a really sharp circle on them, so you don't get any diffraction spikes. I don't know for certain because I haven't tried this, but my suspicion is that if you try and stop down towards the back of the lens, you'll end up with vignetting rather than the effect that you're actually looking for, which is to stop down. But I can't tell you categorically that that's the case.
Yeah.
That's my best guess. But I can tell you that stopping down at the front works extremely well.
Thanks, Steve.
And when you've done this, Steve, has that been on longer focal length imaging, or has that been on the simple landscape imaging?
That's been more on 200mm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Lens, but I have done it with a 50mm lens.
Yeah.
With good effect.
Yeah.
But that 50mm lens was atrocious. It was a standard old Canon lens, the one that used to come with the old film cameras. And the particular example that I had, although they called a nifty 50, my one was a throw it in the dustbin 50. It really was pretty awful. But I found that if I stopped that down with a ring, it made the lens usable. So it will work on shorter focal lengths, but I haven't tried it on anything near the sort of focal lengths that you're using, which are really, very, very wide angle.
Yeah, yeah.
But the actual concept itself, by putting the ring at the front, does work very well, and I can't imagine that wouldn't work even on shorter focal lengths.
Yeah.
Not telescope lenses.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve. Martin, can I ask a couple of questions, please? I was very curious. You said about what subjects work and which don't for the cards. I'm curious. What do the public like and what don't they like on these?
Right. Okay. Well, I decided I would. I'm almost embarrassed to say this because I decided I would do the signs of the horoscope, signs of the zodiac. It's a terrible admission. I've got a shot of the process I'm going to do, which is from Turkey, but it's got Scorpio on it, so I can and I bling them up. I bling up the pictures, so you break all the rules. I mean, you can oversaturate, you can bling up the stars, and so I bling up the stars, and if you're a Pisces, someone will come along and say, "Oh, George, he's a Pisces. Let's get him this," and they work. What I haven't managed to do, and I can't quite bring myself to do it, I've got a nice picture of the Heart and Soul Nebula. This is deep sky, but it's a Heart and Soul Nebula. And I thought, Valentine's, I give you my heart and soul. I can't do it.
Do it. Think of the money, Martin. Think of the
money. But yes, so some of the local Peak District landscape is where people know it and they recognise where it is. They go down quite well. Yeah. One or two of the more dramatic deep sky ones, so M42 and that sort of thing, which can really bump up the saturation and fill them with drama, and really overdo them to make them ping. What is it? They make them pop, isn't it? That's what it's supposed to be. In the particular. Yeah, they sell really well. The ones that didn't sell well were the ones that I'd really made, taken at midnight, but made to look like daylight. So they got stars in them, but they actually have brightened them too much, so they just look like a scene from the day. And the comment a lot of people said was, "Well, why don't you just go and take them during the day?" Which is a fair point, really.
The other question, really, if you don't mind, is how do you have the confidence to go to some of these places in the middle of the night? And have you had any odd encounters? I mean,
I've had wonderful encounters. I haven't had any odd ones. I've just had some fantastic ones. I saw earlier that one at Fabric Rock, and there were these young kids out there. I don't know what they were doing and what they were smoking exactly, but they were having a good time. But they said, "What are you doing? It's taking pictures of the dog. We can have a look." And they were so excited. And it was just it was lovely. And I've had lots of experiences like that. I took a picture of Bakewell Bridge at night, and it's quite a busy route, quite a few people passing, and there was a positive little crowd gathered to see the picture of Bakewell Bridge at night with the stars in the background. So it's always nice. I take you are going to remote places, so you could potentially feel a bit vulnerable, but most wildlife's fairly friendly. It's not had any nasty experiences.
There's just a few comments. Alien 13 saying focusing away from the centre will help with the corner stars. I think that's the focus at third position thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Happy Kate is asking, I know you haven't got a microphone, Kate, so I'll ask, is how do you deal with edge bend if stitching frames together with a wide lens?
Yes, you need a certain amount of overlap, don't you? But even then, what you do, it depends what software you've got for stitching the panoramas. So PT, I don't know, let's say it said PTGUI, P2GUI. You basically tell it, you click on a feature, which in this case is a star, on one image, and then you click that same star on your next one that's with it, and you do this on a whole bundle of stars, and so it knows exactly how to distort the picture to pull it all together. Now, you can't do that in Lightroom. So if you're using something like Lightroom, you just have to overlap more so that you get less distortion. But PTGUI will actually manage that for you, provided it's quite a labour of love clicking all these stars to get them so that they will match.
So it's not totally automatic. There is some human interface.
It will do an automatic one, but it's not really designed for stars. So architectural features and things like that will work well on, but stars not so good.
Alien 13 was also saying it's difficult to add a filter type stop down ring due to the shape of the glass on very short focal length lenses.
Oh yes, yeah.
So that's where 3D printing will come in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Should we crack up? Go with your demo, Martin. If there's any other questions, have them at the end of that.
Yeah, I thought I'd just do a quick demonstration of Lightroom. Lightroom is, because I use Photoshop a lot, I have the Adobe's Creative Cloud, so it comes bundled with Lightroom, which is really good. Some of you know all about Lightroom, but it's just a good tool for processing your normal sort of photographs. I don't use Lightroom much if it's a deep sky image. I use Photoshop and PixInsight, but for this sort of photography, Lightroom's good. But it's primarily it's a combined cataloging software. So it does a great job. It takes your raw images. It will preserve the raw image and do what they call a non-destructive process. So every process you take, it adds to a file. But the raw image itself is untouched. But when you bring it up in Lightroom, it will apply the process, and at any time in the future, it can apply those processes. So you see your processed image, and then when you want to make that permanent, you can export it as a TIFF or a JPEG or whatever. So this is Lightroom. Get rid of that. Sorry. Right, I can't. Grant, I don't know if I can. Just a second. I can't see. I can't see the processing tools I need to access because there's everyone's image. Can I minimize?
You should be able to just park that window out the way or slide it over. We can see the whole screen.
That's it. Where you go. That's it. Okay, now it's better. You're down the bottom now. So this picture was taken in Turkey. We were on a sailing trip, very nice, and we dropped anchor off this nice little taverna. And Turkey, out here, they do have quite a lot of light on land, quite a bit of light pollution, but away to the sea, it's really not, it's not too bad. And this was quite a rural location as well, away from the major towns. And from the anchor, where we were anchor, there was this really nice headland, and it looked fantastic. I was really excited because it looked like there were some features that would really work well with this Milky Way. So we had a nice meal at the taverna, plenty of wine, and I tried to stagger along to this headland, and it was just a no-go. I nearly killed myself in the process, couldn't get there. So I went back to the taverna and found a little lane that I could stroll along, and this was the best view I could get. So it wasn't ideal, but I went for it. So this is a completely unprocessed image, and you can see some information about it. This is very handy because you don't need to go taking notes. When you take all your pictures at night, trying different ISOs, trying different exposures, you can actually see it, all this data's here. So this was a 30-second exposure, f1.8, 14mm focal length, ISO 1600. And this is the lens, it's actually a Sigma 1.8 lens. So if we go into develop mode now, and the first thing I want to do is Lightroom, like the stuff like DxO optics, has a database of lenses, and you can correct the aberrations in the lens. So you just click enable profile corrections, and it comes up with a Sigma lens, and that's my lens, and it makes the corrections, and the vignetting all magically disappears. It's effortless. There is a manual, you can do it manually, and that works really well as well. You correct distortions, correct vignetting, if your lens doesn't happen to be in the database. You then, perhaps you don't like the sky color, I'm not keen on that sky color. I don't quite know why it's come out like that, but you've got the familiar dropper tool to automatically set the sky background. And you might be happy with that, you might not. You might want to go for a bit warmer if you want. You just slide at the temperature slider and make it a bit warmer, or you might like something a bit cooler. But I'm quite happy with the automatic one at this stage. So Lightroom works a lot on just sliding things around. It's so much more convenient and simple and appropriate for this type of image than battling away in Photoshop, I find. There's this tool which most of the time I don't go near for any daytime photography, but for nighttime Milky Way, it's quite probably the best contrast enhancer. It's called the dehaze tool. So right now, just any changes are going to apply to the whole image. But I'm just going to turn that down and just pull out the contrast, so we're getting more Milky Way. And then I don't really want to do in this. I don't really want to do anything with the rest of it. I want to work on Milky Way. So I'm just going to. This is very rough and ready. But I'm going to use a radial filter. There we go. And I'm going to select the Milky Way. And give ourselves a bit of margin for error. And I can't show it because let me just move us around a bit. That's it. This is a mask. So this tells you, actually the mask is, this is what it's actually going to work on. So the red is what it's going to work on. And you can see at the edges it's feathered. So you can alter that feather, and I like quite a big feather. Look, the feather. And then perhaps up the saturation a bit. Not too much, so just a little bit extra saturation. And there's this little contrast tool called clarity, which sometimes works nicely, and others it's very much trial and error. I'm not very scientific with any of this. So that's brought it out a little bit more. So now I want to do some specific work on specific areas. So these colourful areas, I want to pull out some more. And these dark areas, perhaps just tweak that contrast a bit. So we can use a brush tool. So now this waggling about is my brush, and you can see the inner circle is full power, and then the outer circle shows the limit of the feather. So between the two circles, it's feathered. And again, I shall increase the saturation. Well, first of all, I'm going to decide, paint in which areas I want to work on. So it's all around here, bits I want to work on the colour. So saturation a bit more, a bit too much of that. There we go. And that's a little bit up here. And I'll finish with that. And go back in again. And this time I'm going to just make some contrast tweaks, I think, to these areas up here. No. That's it. So draw the area I want to work on. And we'll just up the contrast a little bit, maybe the dehaze. Oops, don't want to do that. But just subtle. Okay. This is what I normally do when I first get an image. I just do something very, very rough, and then I'll spend ages afterwards faffing around. I'd like to think it was more scientific than faffing around, but honestly it isn't. So now this quite a neat tool. I want to brighten up these parts, these areas. I want to make them just that bit brighter. So click on this little tool and just take it to the area I want to. It's going to brighten this specific colour. There we go. And then we'll do this one a bit as well. So that's pinged it out a little bit more. And then, oops, I think we'll have a look at the histogram. Okay, yeah, tone curve. So we'll go for the luminance and just see, you've got a normal stretch. That's far too much, isn't it? So stretch it up like that, and then we'll pull it back down here. Still too much. It's very easy to overdo it. Then you come back in the morning, you think that's awful. You go and do it properly. And then there's this new thing in Lightroom. This is brand new to me. I don't quite know how this works, so I just play around with it and take this down here. That adds a little bit of blue to the highlights, and might be a bit much. Back that off. That'll do me. So that gives you the basic flavour of Lightroom. Well, what you can see down here is this is the original, and this is my very bodgy process. So that was done in 5 minutes, and with a bit of care and attention, you can do a whole lot better than that. So I can see now they've got this band of brightness across the image, which I really don't like. That'd take quite a bit. You use gradient filters to remove that. With a little bit of green in there that I never like green, so that could easily be removed. But that gives you a very quick flavour of Lightroom and easy processing.
Thanks, Martin. That's super. I think you've given me a new way of looking at Lightroom. I hadn't realised half as much as what it can do, as you just showed in such a short demo. So thank you for that. Has anyone got any questions? I think we're all questioned out, Martin. Oh, Norman's got one.
Yeah, Martin. Do you set your white balance to auto for RAW, or do you have a set of settings that you tweak the color balance to, or the temperature?
Oh, for processing, or
Yeah.
or in camera.
No, well, not in camera, in processing. You know,
Not for this. Not for anything like this. So again, Norman, now you're going to have to help me out. So when do I have a set idea for the chip that gives a neutral balance? So
that's, you can. I mean, normally I would just leave mine auto, and then because it's a raw image, do the processing in Lightroom.
Yes.
But I'm just wondering, you know, when you come to that white balance, because obviously the camera will take the picture and just soak up the photons.
Yes.
And record those without any significant processing.
Yes.
And you do that in Lightroom. But I'm just wondering for night skies, depending on, say, light pollution or how dark the skies are, whether you've got any feel or preference for the settings in white balance.
Not really. If I was doing a deep sky image, I'd look very closely at the histogram and how those colours balanced out. But I don't do that in Lightroom. I'm just basically, it's very crude, Norman. Really, I'm just looking to see what I think looks. It's just use Mark one eyeball. I think I've not got any sort of scientific structured way of doing it. Do you do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I sort of, I have taken images in really dark skies. I mean, in the middle of Africa, and the auto white balance just, well, I can see it by eye. I can see the brown dust of the Milky Way. And that's what the camera's giving me. But, you know, I don't often see images that have been processed that way. People,
Right.
I'm just wondering, you know, what the true white balance is.
Right. Yes.
Martin, tell me, when you used the dropper in the early stage, was that set in the white? Was that on the white balance?
Yes, I think that is supposed to set a neutral colour, isn't it?
So you're using the dark background of the night sky as your neutral dark, in that sense, I guess.
Yes, that's my understanding of it, Grant. Yes, but then normally I quickly deviate from that because I tend not to. I like to add my own personality to the image, which is probably very wrong.
I think it's about the results, isn't it? It's artistic, isn't it? That
I think personally, I'm sort of halfway house. You look at a lot of photographers who are daytime photographers who do these spectacular nighttime Milky Ways, and they're purples and all sorts of psychedelic colours often, and I feel that they're not really in sympathy with actually what is out there. So I kind of want to make the images pop a little bit, but I do want to do that in a reasonably simple. Sorry, you are trying to reproduce what is out there to some extent, but I'm personally, I think everyone's different, aren't we? We see this with deep sky stuff as well. How some people like hugely saturated images, and other people like much softer, less sharpened image. I think I'm inclined to more go a bit wilder with this sort of image, but I try and keep it in check and keep some sense of respecting what the sky should look like.
Just on that, following on, I guess, from what Norman's saying, there is, do you calibrate your monitor, and do you use a specific monitor?
Yes, I mean, I calibrate the monitor for two reasons. One is it's particularly when you're having cards printed, and my printers, I have to change them to CMYK as well, which is an additional complication. So the calibration is really important for something like that. Otherwise, you get them back and they don't look like anything that how you intended them to. unfortunately, I also, I think it's good to have a spider calibrator. And this is just a laptop, but it calibrates the laptop, and I've got a big 30-inch monitor, which is calibrated, and so the colours look the same across the monitors. But I know that other people, on the forum, you're dependent on the calibration of other people's monitors as well, aren't you? So you always have to try and factor that in as well, particularly when it comes to things like the black point and so on.
Yeah, some lots of comments coming in. Alien13 was just saying he also uses a spider, but also asked any alternatives to Lightroom that you've used or anyone else has used.
I did. There is lots. Coral do one. The other really well-known one is DxO Optics, which is very similar. It does the same thing with managing your RAW files, and it has a big camera database, a big lens database as well. So that's DxO Optics, which I think is probably, you pay a one-off fee for that, unlike the Adobe Creative Cloud package where you pay monthly. But
I guess. Sorry, Martin.
Oh, I just about a week ago, I just did a search to see Lightroom typed in Lightroom alternatives. And there's quite a lot out there, but I can't comment on them because I've never used them.
But if you use Photoshop already, but not Lightroom, then a lot of the developed stuff is in Photoshop and shared between the two. So you can get some way, can't you, if you bring a RAW into Photoshop?
Yeah.
And you're more comfortable with the Photoshop interface. Yeah.
And I'll and straight from Lightroom, you can just say export for further processing in Photoshop. So I do that quite freely. Normally to go to Star Spikes Pro, Noel Carbone's Star Spikes, and there's a nice little flare, because often with wide field, the stars don't stand out very much. It's like in a dark sky, but in our light polluted sky, the stars don't stand up very much. And if you want to show off a constellation, like a zodiac constellation, you need to bling them up a bit. So Star Spikes Pro is really good for that.
Thanks, Martin. Has anyone else got any other questions? Sorry, Norman, if I cut you off before. I think you. Okay, cool. Thank you very much, Martin. It's been really interesting. You've also made me think we maybe need to revisit the STL challenges, because I really enjoyed with the STL challenge. My favourite ones were the ones that you sort of highlighted, that you posted, and Dave W and James as well, with particularly I think buildings, when there's a building and starscapes. I think it's just the melding of those two things. I think it looks fantastic. So
I've found an old barn stable type thing in some remote field in Derbyshire, and I'd worked out I could get the conjunction on the 21st over that barn. I could have a proper Star of Bethlehem house.
Well, if you need some shepherds, I'm sure we could round some.
That would have been a great SGL challenge, wouldn't it? Star of Bethlehem.
Well, there's still time. Maybe there's still time.
Are looking great.
No, are they? Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Martin, for giving us the talk. It's a shame it wasn't in person at a Star Party, but I think we'll all agree this is a good second place, and it really is inspirational. And I think hopefully it's something as well for beginners and people just getting into astrophotography, that there's so much you can achieve without even owning a telescope. And the software out there to enable this is pretty amazing these days. So there's no excuse. We can all have a go. Anyway, that's us until the new year now. Unfortunately, we haven't got any more talks for the next couple of weeks. We're going to have a bit of a Christmas break, so we'll announce up the New Year's talks, and we'll carry this. We will carry the talks ongoing. It's only just having a bit of a Christmas break. It's my birthday next Sunday, and I'll be having a nice few glasses of port. So I won't be around for next week, and then the week after is obviously Christmas. So this is probably the last time we'll catch up before Christmas. So happy Christmas, everybody. Thank you very much, Martin, for your wonderful talk tonight.
Pleasure.
We will put it up on YouTube, and also the talk earlier from Jack Martin. about spectroscopy, which is also really interesting. So if you've got any interest in spectroscopy, please have a view of that on YouTube. And keep the suggestions for speakers coming in as well, so we can keep this going in the new year. So yeah, keep adding it, and happy Christmas, everybody. Thank you again, Martin, and good night. Cheerio, everybody. Take care.